We have Sister Catherine with us today, and she's going to share her story with us, a wonderful story. And we say welcome, marhaba.
Shukran. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Just share with us first the background of Sister Catherine. Who is she, how she was raised, and everything.
Okay. Well, basically, I don't know if you can tell by my accent. I'm truly what you call a Southern belle. I was born in Texas. I was raised in Alabama. I left Alabama in 1984 after becoming Mrs. Alabama to seek my fame and fortune as an actress in the big hot city of Atlanta. And there I met Muhammad. To back up a little bit how I was raised, I didn't meet my biological father until I was 38 years old. So I was actually raised my early parts of my years with my grandparents and my mother. My mom remarried around the age of 12 to an amazing man of God. And we all became Christians a few years later after the marriage. I served the Lord diligently. I found the Lord at 17, raised in a strong Pentecostal denomination, Assembly of God, and just was on fire, really seriously on fire for the Lord, was singing, evangelism, doing whatever I could. And then I don't know what happened. Not that I ever stopped believing or doubting God. I think from as early as 4 years old, knew that I knew God was real and loved the Lord and hear stories about God around dinner table and would cry and weep. And there was something in my heart tugging. But I was seeing things in church that I don't know, something was void. It wasn't the Lord, it was just maybe community. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it, but I know there was some kind of void that I was looking for. And so after my reign as Mrs. Alabama, it even became a greater void. And I went, like I said, to seek, I guess, man's approval, seeking fame and fortune. And I met Muhammad in Atlanta. He was there from Syria, going to college. And I was there doing acting and commercial work and different things at that point in my life. And when I met him, it was, he said all the right things. I mean, he really, truly had all the right words. I'd gone through a divorce, and so he was charming and the first kind of worldly man type thing that I'd ever met. And he was charming, and, he wasn't tall, but he was short, dark, and handsome. And, he was charismatic. He was passionate. He was things that I guess I was looking for. Appeared to be very godly and very family oriented, even though we met in a nightclub. Okay, so I should have got a clue, but it was just the things that he said, the way he took charge, the way he took control of our relationship. He swept me off my feet on the dance floor. He could dance. He could, he was, like I said, a passionate person. We dated off and on for about a year, and then we decided to marry.
Even though his name's Muhammad.
Oh, well, the first few minutes he told me his name was Jamie and he was from Italy, okay? It was later on in the evening that he actually confessed that his name was Muhammad. But we're talking about, this was the early 80s. So I being an Alabama Southern girl, honey, I didn't know anything about Islam, you know. And the way he presented it, which we kind of avoided the topic of religion, but the way he presented it sounded so similar to what I believed. He believed in heaven and hell and angels and God and Jesus and Mary and, so he presented well. He presented, and, when you're in love, people say you're blind. I was deaf and dumb on top of it, so it was just a whirlwind relationship.
Right.
And when he had been married before, and when he asked me to marry him, he asked me if I would marry him in the mosque, because his first marriages that were not, and he wanted to really marry me. And he said, like I said, I want you to have my children. I will take care of you. And all the things that women really, really want to hear, that we deny a lot of times, but really want to hear.
Right.
So we married in the mosque. I did not tell my parents, who were born again Christians. No, I did not. I was an mature adult and I could make my own decisions at this point.
Wow.
And so actually, when we went to get married, it was a little bit of deception. I wasn't sure if we were getting married or just getting engaged in the mosque. And then what happened in the ceremony was kind of bizarre. It was the women were all on one side and the men were on the other. It was after Jamal, after the Friday prayer. So there were still people that were left in the mosque. And there was like a curtain that divided the two of us. And then I kind of went to the front of the curtain and he was at the front of the curtain on the other side, which I still couldn't see him. I was kind of feel like it was the Leah Rachel story, and so I could be marrying anybody over there. But anyway, so there were three guys and they kept doing the whole service in Arabic. So I wasn't really sure
what you were saying.
I was saying. Exactly. And, the little ladies were beside me and they would like kind of nudge me to say yes at that point and then la 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 la, doing the celebrating and stuff. And so after the service or ceremony was over, which I had to repeat everything in Arabic 3 times, which, I don't know if it was valid or not because I couldn't speak Arabic, at that point. And so after that, they gave me a little cookie, and I bit a little cookie, and they gave him a little bite, and then he was gone for quite a while, and the women were there, but they didn't speak any English, but they were bringing me food and water and different things. And then I heard a little knock on the women's side, and they said, go, your husband. And so I go out, and how an American traditional ceremony, you hug, you kiss, whatever. Well, there was no affection whatsoever.
Wow.
Matter of fact.
How did you take that?
Well, I didn't know. I was kind of confused because I went to embrace him and he's like, pushing me back and no. And then finally when we get into the car and I'm stripping off the veil, the hijab, he was like, in our religion, we don't show public affection, and especially here at the mosque. So it's like, this is crazy stuff, Anyway, it didn't matter. I was okay.
So you wore hijab.
I had to wear it to the mosque to get married, because you can't go into the mosque with.
You didn't mind putting that?
I loved him. It was like stupid. Whatever, dear. If this is what's going to make you happy and mean something to you, love. That's you fine. Do things.
Yeah.
So we pull out of the parking lot, and then he hands me a marriage license, and half of it was written in Islam, and in Arabic, and then there was parts in Arabic, but there was one part where my name had been changed, and my name had been changed to Zana. And I'm like, I asked him, what does this mean? Why is my name changed? And he said, because, that's my favorite name. And so I gave you my favorite name. So he made everything romantic. Okay. Everything had a reason, great salesman, everything had a close. And so, after I looked at the license, he said, but did you change? Did you change your religion? And I said, no. He goes, well, then don't worry about it. Because apparently even on the certificate, it showed I had given up my Christianity and converted to Islam. And so again, I questioned that. And like I said, he said, did you change in your heart? And I said, no. He says, then don't worry about it. But
it's just a paper.
It's just a piece of paper, exactly. Little did I know how now, looking back, how important that was, because Islam, all it takes is an intention, So I still had converted. And then apparently I had said the Islamic creed, repeating all these things that these imams were telling me to repeat without even knowing what I was saying.
Wow.
Right. That was the beginning of our long 15 years, yes.
Set up to say the Shahada without knowing the Shahada.
Exactly. Just reflecting back for quickly, we have 4 children together. I have a total of 7 children. My first 3, I had 3 before I had met Muhammad. But the thing is that even when he would tickle the kids, instead of how in America we say uncle to make you stop, no, it was the Islamic creed. He would make them say Rasulullah, what, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm saying. And it was like, anyway, so that's kind of bizarre. But anyway, so our journey began from there. And,
were you happy after that? you left the mosque and you're married now. And
Well,
everything.
yeah, of course. And then shortly after, you know, I became pregnant with our first child, and you know, I waited all these years to have a natural child. My first children, which I still consider my natural children, but they were adopted. I had two girls from I adopted, were abused children I got from the States, and I went to Brazil to get my third child. So this was my first natural child, and you know, so of course I was, you know, excited and in love, thinking, and you know, with the man of my dreams, and he appeared to be everything that I hoped for.
Did you tell your parents later?
I told them that day, you know, later on that day.
How did it go?
Oh, well, not real well. Matter of fact, there was a huge fight between him and my mom, and he kind of gave me the, you know, I guess mandate. Who am I going to listen to now? You know, am I going to listen to my mother, or am I going to listen to, you know, to him? He's now my husband, and didn't the Bible say that you're to leave your mother and father? You know, I mean, he knew enough of the Bible, you know, to use it. Yeah. So, so what do you say to that? You know,
Right.
I loved my parents, but at the same time, I'd started a new life with him, and I didn't want to lose them. I didn't want to lose him, and so it was kind of a very conflict. And you know, over the next course of several years, the control thing that drew me to him was the very thing that really amplified a few years later, that actually ended help in the marriage. For instance, he would subtly take things away from me. Now, nothing blatant. Okay, I was working, and I was an actress. Of course, that's taboo in Islam. I didn't know that, but you know, he would say, "You can get a better job." So it was always like, "You can get better friends. Your family's trying to break us up." So it was all these subtle things, not like you're not going to see your mother, or you're not going to work here. Or it was never like that type of a thing. It was more of just you can do better than that. More appeared to be love, if you know what I'm saying, and in my best interest, which turned out not to be in my best interest. And then I became more and more isolated. And then during that time also, when our daughter was 16 months, I went to Syria for the first time without him. And I went to meet his family, you know, and so they could meet their first biological grandchild. And so I go to Syria, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was absolutely, it was amazing. I was treated like a queen. I wasn't, you know, hated, or they loved me, and the hospitality that was overwhelming. I mean, everything was served on silver trays and doilies, and you know, you couldn't even go into a house and be there 5 minutes without coffee or tea or juice or dessert or something. And then the gifts they were showering.
How was that for you as an American?
Oh my goodness, it was overwhelming. It was that community that I had never had experienced. Just it felt like real love, you know. I always say, if the Arabs have anything over all of us, it's hospitality. They have hospitality. It's amazing. And I was showered with gifts, wedding gifts, and then of course they loved my daughter, and I felt a sense of safety and security that I'd not felt. Even things like trips on the bus. We would go from Damascus to Aleppo, or to Homs, or wherever we would travel. You know, it was no big deal to take my baby and pass her up and down the bus, and people giving her cookies, and you know, it wasn't like here. You would never ever let your child out of your sight, you know, much less. And here, you know, my child is being passed up and down the bus, and I have so many crazy stories. But you know, it was just this.
It's different.
Community, yeah.
Very different.
Very different. So
how did it go like that? Like pretty normal life, like let's say.
Yeah.
Despite the cultural differences and stuff.
The first few years were very, you know, he had his moments of you know, he was very Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When he was good, he was amazing. When he was bad, he was horrible. You know. So there was no, the other thing, there was no, I know what makes me angry, okay? I know when I'm reaching my boiling point, but with him, you never knew. You know, it was like, this could, you could put the carpet in the wrong place and you'd be knocked down a flight of stairs. Or, you could do something you would really think is going to make him angry, like be an hour late home, and he was fine. But then the next time, if you were 15 minutes late, there was 20 questions. So there was no consistency.
Right.
So I think the intrigue of never being able to figure him out, do you understand?
Yeah.
Was like, I was always trying to understand. And then the first trip to Syria, being there 4 months, so I could learn to be the good Arabic wife and, learn his culture.
4 months.
The first time I stayed 4 months with my daughter, and trying to learn the culture, trying to learn the language, trying to learn how to cook, learning how to clean, learning how to be everything, that he needed in me as a wife. I mean, I was totally just.
But you're in the United States. Why you want to learn something in another country while he's here? He should adopt,
I don't know. It was, Rashid, it was almost like I wasn't myself.
Okay.
It was almost like, and I don't mean to sound weird, but almost like a spell had been put over me, or something crazy, because even the way, I'm a very independent woman, always have been. I guess it's pretty apparent, but I've never been one of these shy, type people. And, but with him, I was not me. I was totally submissive and different. It was like, even when he would be gone for just a couple of hours or during the day, there was almost like this physical thing that would happen to me when I was separated from him. I don't know, I don't think it was real love. I think there was something spiritually going on, something deeper than what I don't even know how to explain it. I had never felt anything like that before or till this point in my life. So.
And so what went wrong later? Like things that started like putting questions in your head, or like questioning a lot of stuff in his in this relationship and
right.
stuff?
It was during the pregnancy of our second child.
Okay.
We found out I was pregnant with a boy. The crazy as it sounds, the abuse really heightened at that point. It went more from verbal and emotional to actual physical. At 6 months, we got into a huge fight. He had stayed out all night. And when he came home and I questioned him, we really got into a real physical fight where he actually kicked me in the stomach and almost, I was afraid I was going to lose the baby. So it was kind of strange knowing that I'm carrying his heir, his son, which is supposedly, the most important thing to a Muslim man is to have that firstborn son, because even at that point, my name even changed. I'm no longer, Katrina or the mother of Zena. I'm now only the mother of Zachariah, and no one else, none of my other children. And so, but I was so determined. I had failed at one marriage. And with all the naysayers, I guess I'm like determined that I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this work. I'm putting everything, 150%, into this relationship and into this marriage. Even to the point after that, I actually started going to the Quran, going to the mosque, learning not the Quran, but learning Arabic. Taking Arabic classes, and then of course when I went to Syria. Then I went back the very next year into Syria too, and just I was in it all the way. I was just going for it. And
did you convert to Islam?
I didn't convert until the second time I was in Syria. The third time I was in Syria. Muhammad had been going out a lot. We had started a company, a mattress company, and we were making, at that point, lots of money. My weekly allowance, and this was in the 90s, my weekly allowance was $1,200 a week. Okay, that was just my money to blow and play. We were going to trips. We went to Egypt for, 3 weeks. We were going all over the world, taking these elaborate trips. I had gold from one end of my arm to the, diamonds and 9-carat tennis bracelets. And, so there was so much stuff that he was now giving me. And it was really for his show, more than it was
Right.
really for the love of me. But anyway, the mindset's totally different.
Right.
But I went. It was my third or fourth time to Syria. I'm sorry, I can't really remember. It's been a little while, and it was to the point where I was so frustrated because I didn't want the marriage to dissolve, and he was staying out all night and going out a lot, and I thought, well, maybe if I convert. I'd already done a lot of studying on Islam as far as the do's and the don'ts, basically how to meet in the middle, how to raise our children, you know. So I didn't offend his religion or he didn't offend my religion, which there is no such thing as a middle ground. But anyway, I tried. And then it was during the month of Ramadan. I was in Syria, and we were in Damascus. His mother was from Damascus, and was to the point where I just I'd ask everybody every question I could possibly ask. And so they take me down to the mosque, the larger mosque in Damascus. And there was an imam there who had lived in Chicago, who was from Syria, but he spoke very good English. So I spent a couple of hours in his chamber just asking questions, and he seemed to be able to answer me enough to satisfy me, okay? My biggest issue was the Jesus prophet thing, okay? Was Jesus the Son of God, or was Jesus a prophet?
Right.
And I still couldn't quite wrap my hand around giving that the deity of Christ up. But at the same time, here I was in a conflict, you know? I'm living in this earth. I'm in love with this man. I have 2 children thus far, and what do you do?
Right.
And so, you know, I figured, why can't I have both religions? In the back of my mind, you know? So I go and I after talking to him, I look at my mother-in-law and I tell her, yeah, I'm ready to make my shahada. And so we go, and she teaches me how to do all the washing and, you know, the washing the hands and washing the face, and the prayer is about to start. So I get into the prayer and then just get caught up in all of it, you know, and then the parties started and the celebration, and then the whole town went crazy and, you know, bringing me gifts. You know, I'm a Muslim, and bringing me money and gold. And I'm like, this is crazy, you know, but it was great. The attention was amazing. And, you know,
You liked it.
Oh, who wouldn't, you know? And come on, you know.
Didn't you think about your Christian faith, your Christianity?
I tried not to.
Okay.
It didn't hit me until I left Syria, and then we all went on a trip because Muhammad couldn't go to Syria because he didn't serve in the military. So we had to meet in Egypt, and he met me in Egypt, and I did not tell him that I had converted. And so when we get to Egypt here, I'm all covered, you know, I'm wearing the hijab, you know, the veil and the long garb and everything. And so the jalaba. And so he gets off the plane, and I tell you, this was bizarre. I'm sitting in the airport in Egypt waiting for him to come, and off embarks a group from Saudi Arabia. And these women were all covered completely, you know, I'm talking mask and the whole bit. And as they're coming off the plane, they're disrobing.
Right.
And here I am now, this pious Muslim, right?
Yeah,
Okay, you know, I'm doing my 5 prayers a day, and I'm fasting Ramadan, starving, and, you know, and so here they're coming, and I'm telling you, as they're coming off, they're not 5 paces behind their husbands, they're like 20 paces ahead, and mini skirts. Streetwalkers look decent.
Right.
I'm telling you. So that was my first pause. I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. You know, how come you're one thing in your country and here you're in Egypt and you're, you know, anyway. So he gets off the plane, and he didn't even recognize me, of course, because now he didn't know that I had converted. So, of course, you know, it's a big deal. He cries. He's like, oh, thank God, you know, my heart's, my desires come true. And so that whole trip in Egypt was an amazing journey. And
he was happy.
Oh, more than happy. You know, he's now going to heaven. You know?
Yeah, right.
And so he's going to get his 72 virgins, and, you know, he's really happy now. I'm just kidding. But so anyway, we get back to the States, and things went crazy. It actually, now, because I was a Muslim, the abuse actually heightened, because now I'm under the Sharia law. Right. Now I'm subject to Sharia law because I have made, my profession of faith.
Yeah.
And not only the abuse from him, the abuse from my mother-in-law
How's that?
became greater, because according to him and her, the mother of the firstborn son owns everything. The wife owns nothing. Everything belongs to her. So now she's making me subject to Islam. On top of it, she comes for a long visit for a year. And like, we're fighting. I mean, she's taking over my house. She's taking over my private household things, even my own private bedroom with stuff, just I would find her everywhere. And, now, like I said, I'm not only subject to him, I'm subject to her because she's the mother of Muhammad.
Right.
So it just started going bizarre. I would now is open to see the violence because they had me. I had money. I was now converted. My mother-in-law would give me all these horrible stories about if you were to leave Islam, what would happen to you or happen to your children or whatever. So how am I going to leave? How am I going to get out of this,
So what did you do?
So I stayed in Islam for about 3 years, very faithful, praying. And like I said, now I'm going to Islamic school.
Doing Ramadan and everything.
Everything, oh yes, doing all the,
the washing, wudu.
The parties, after you break your fast, and iftar dinner, and everything, and even taking my children to Islamic school.
Wow.
Okay, I'm getting on the board of the Islamic school. I'm volunteering at the Islamic school. I'm doing everything, still putting every effort I can, but I didn't see peace. It seemed like the deeper I got into Islam, the less peace I had in my heart. I don't care if I did extra surahs. I don't care if I did extra prayers. I don't care if I prayed all night during Ramadan, during the 10 days of power. It didn't matter. There was no peace. No matter what I did, I couldn't find that peace that I did know before when I was a Christian.
So your peace was stolen. You lost it.
It was completely gone. Not only my peace, but everything started becoming disruptive. And my mother and dad prayed fervently, of course, for me to become, to come back to Christ, and they would pray for my children.
Did you tell them about your conversion to Islam?
My children, yeah, of course.
No, your parents.
It was obvious. I was covering. They lived across the street from me. What are you going to do? I'm coming out of their house with a veil.
So you kept it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I would open the door. I had a hall tree where I'd have the hijab and I couldn't answer the door unless I was covered. People don't understand. It's not just outside in public. It's 24/7. If anyone comes into my house other than my husband or my son or my brother or my father-in-law, I have to cover.
Right.
So I mean, it's a 24/7 thing going on here. You swim in it. You don't go to the beach anymore. You go to Disney and you're covered. So, but anyway,
How did that go? Like with you the first?
Well, it was like this religious thing came over me. I'm like more religious and more spiritual than everybody else because I cover, And it seems like the converts, we become more crazy, if you understand what I'm saying. We become dogmatic because we have converted into it by choice. It wasn't like a birth thing where you've grown up, like
Right.
I was talking about the Saudi women and stuff, God rest her soul. But anyway, but like I said, the abuse and the turmoil just became crazy. So I started, I had been watching Ahmed Dedat's tapes prior to converting. And now I started online on the computer going back to his videos and his messages and actually piecemealing them, tearing them apart, seeing where he had misquoted scripture. I mean, what has Satan used? What did he use on Jesus? He used the word of God.
Right.
What does Islam use? On all of us, they use the Bible. They use God's words,
Right.
And so I started dissecting these videos. And the more I would dissect, the more I saw how they were misquoted and taken out of contents, and just the unsettledness. And like I said, my mother had been praying, and she'd been going to a Bible study consistently for 9 years. We at this point had quite a few houses. We're making millions of dollars, And but every year my mom would go and pray, go to this Bible study. And it was like a teaching segment of whatever they were teaching over the summertime, whatever, for 6 weeks or whatever. And every year she would have them pray for me and write a prayer request and stuff. We had a house in Atlanta, and then we had a house in Florida. I was now living, moved to Florida for part-time just because I just needed some reprieve from everything that was going on in Atlanta. And when I had just moved to Atlanta, we'd built this monstrosity of a house on an island in Florida. And Muhammad had a heart attack. I had only been there like a couple of days, just moved in. I couldn't get in touch with him, and then finally found out that he had had a heart attack. So I had to pack the children up, and my mother went back with me to Atlanta, and he was only 36 at the time. And when I got there, it was like all hell broke loose at that point. My mother-in-law was there. They did not even tell me that he had a heart attack, and the only reason why they had to call me in is because I was his wife, his legal wife, and they could not sign any documents for him to have the surgery. So when all this started coming out, I'm thinking, wait, something's not right. Something's not right. Gave me pause to think. And I had been studying on my own in Florida while Muhammad was still in Atlanta. And my mom had been praying. So I got a call when I was in Atlanta for a group of women to come and rent my house one weekend out of the month for a woman's retreat for 3 months.
Right.
So I said, fine, why not? And these women came in, and I was the only Muslim in my area, only person covered. So, but the pictures on my wall were not covered, okay, with my mother and myself. So these women came in, they saw the pictures on the wall, and it just so happened to be the same Bible study group that my mom had been going to for 9 years. Little did I know who these women were. So these were good old Baptist women, and they went to praying. And literally I had to leave just about everything in the house. We'd just moved in. They anointed my whole house with oil, praying. They would, every weekend they were there praying for my salvation to come back to the Lord. And I even was such a faithful Muslim, I had built a mosque in the bottom of my house so I could go and pray, because women aren't encouraged to go to the mosque. They can, but I had my own where I had the Adhan would go off 5 times a day so I could pray. And so they turned that off. And then they started praying Isaiah, that every word of God would not return void, but would accomplish what it was sent out to be. And my mom apparently had been praying much the same thing, and she was also praying a prayer that's in my first book, Married to Muhammad. It's breaking the strongholds, and it was just a powerful, powerful prayer that her and my dad started praying for like 2 months straight.
Well, since we're talking about your books, can you present them, and what are they about?
Yeah, the first one here, this one came out the day before 9/11. This one basically will take a woman through the dating process all the way through divorce, conversion, and coming out of Islam. And it's really a cut and paste from the Quran and the Hadith. So it's not just my words, it's Islam's words. And I got it from good sources. Even imams told me this was the best Quran to use, the best Hadith versions to use. So it's cut and paste, and it tells you exactly what's going to happen. So it's not even me. It's not me. It's really what Islam says, and how women are to be treated, how the children are to be treated. So that's what this first book was all birthed about. But what happened was these women came into my house, and I had been gone for about 4 months. And when I came back, it was like the Holy Spirit of God had moved in my house. It was like old songs that I had grown up with, Jesus is the cornerstone, Amazing Grace. It just started really haunting me. Scriptures and everything just haunted me. I couldn't get away from this, but there was a warfare, Rashid, that was so strong. It was so strong. I remember sitting at the beach on my where I lived, and looking at, we had what they call the Skyway Bridge that goes over to Tampa, and thinking how I could jump off that bridge and ask God's forgiveness before I hit the ground, before I hit the water. That was the warfare that was so strong. And the only thing that kept me from it was that I knew the fate of my children, what would happen to them if something happened to me. Wow. So it gave me this fight. So I asked Muhammad, could I go to church? And he actually said that I could, because there was so much confusion in our marriage and life. And he was like ready to give up. You know, he just had this heart attack. Sure, go. I went. He only gave me an hour to go. I go to church. I didn't even get my feet into the door until God flooded me. And I just cried and cried and cried. And the Holy Spirit just overtook me. And I knew I had made the wrong decision. And I asked the Lord to forgive me. And the group were there was praying. So then the next week, I asked him if I could go back, and he again said yes, but he wouldn't let me take the children. And he only gave me an hour again. I went to the same church. The church service had already started. So here now, I'm not covered, okay? But nobody.
Oh, you took off.
I wasn't going to a church covered, yeah, you know. So I had taken off the cover, yeah. And I went into the church, and I'm sitting through service, and I don't know what the pastor preached, but all I know is I couldn't wait for him to shut up, because all I wanted to do was run to the altar. So I go down to the altar after the service, and in the Baptist churches, they kind of present you, turn, you know, and everybody. And when I did, the church just kind of stood to their feet, and you could hear the wells. Happened to be the very church that my mom had gone to for 9 years.
Wow.
The women who had rented my house. They've rented my house February, March, April, and May. This was August, and I had come back to the Lord. And they kept coming down and hugging me and saying, we've been in your house. But I didn't hear anything at that point. You know, all I was concentrating on was my relationship and rededicating my life to the Lord, and just the overwhelming forgiveness and asking God to forgive me for denying the deity of Christ. And not that I really did. I don't even know if I denied it, because I would kind of sneak Jesus in my prayers. But anyway, that was the beginning of my return.
Going back to your story and talking about your research and trying to find out the debates of Ahmad Didat and his books and the flaws in his arguments, what did you find out about Islamic Christianity that made a difference in your decision?
Well, the fact that he had left out so much, and so much was misquoted, and that he just... He was a master at twisting the word. He was really a master at twisting the word. But the thing that happened, well, as doing my research, I ran across a man called John Gilchrist. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
From
South Africa, an amazing apologetics, and he had already rebutted all of his work, which he's an attorney, and he knew Sharia law very well, as well as law itself. And so the way he was presenting, I just started studying more of, after that point, studying John Gilchrist. And I actually got to train and study under him for a while, which was absolutely amazing. But
he has a book about the resurrection of Christ and how...
his work is phenomenal. And of course, he followed Ahmed Didat for years. And of course, this is sidetracking off the story, but he was really a very strong instrument in my return to Christ, because with all the doubts, and it really, like I said, it got to the point where Muhammad let me kind of go to church for about a year. During this time, though, I did not know, our oldest daughter had been going to friends' house to spend the night on Saturday night and going to church on Sunday mornings. So our oldest daughter had already given her heart to the Lord.
Wow, without
nobody knowing, right, secretly. And so, I just, like I said, just started studying John Gilchrist's writing, and Muhammad kind of let me go on for about a year. And then I was a gospel singer prior to all of this,
So you just reaffirmed your faith. Did you search for things about Islam as well?
Oh yeah, that's just how these books were written, because I would do hours and hours of research. I mean, I probably went to over, I don't know, several thousand Islamic websites rebuttaling things. I would take tracts from mosque and rebuttal their...
What was the most striking in your findings? Like, what did you...
It was all of it. It's hard to say if there's like just one thing. The main thing was the deity of Christ. You know, because without the deity of Christ, without Christ being the Son of God, there is no salvation. You can believe in Jesus all day. You know, you can be a believer. Satan's a believer, you know.
Right.
But it's removing who Christ really is. We remove him, we have no salvation.
Right.
Because without the blood of Jesus, you can do rituals all day long. You can go to church. You can teach Bible school. You can do anything. But without that personal, intimate relationship with a Father, a loving God, there is no salvation.
Right.
So that was the biggest thing that, I had rejected, or was rejecting that part of who the Lord was.
So when you went to church and you gave your life back to Jesus and you went home, did you tell Muhammad?
No. No. I was afraid. I lived in fear for quite a few months. So I decided to do something kind of covert. And when he would leave for work, I would bring out my praise and worship tapes and sing and stuff. And he'd let me join the choir, but I was always on a time limit. And I decided to have a concert. And I systematically wove all these songs into this concert and invited Muhammad to come to church. And I was giving my testimony in between the songs, hoping and praying he was going to get saved. I just knew without a doubt that he was going to come to the Lord. And so we have the service. And by this time now we had 2 more children, twins, and they were like 3 years old. And halfway through my singing and service and stuff, our youngest daughter started breaking out in tears and crying. Muhammad's getting upset. I come down to get her. She comes to me, and the thing was, the Holy Spirit had moved on her. She gave her heart to the Lord.
Wow.
So, he's thinking we have done something to manipulate her into this, which you can't manipulate that, because he doesn't understand that it's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's a person that comes inside and brings conviction and brings, repentance. And so when we get home that evening, he had to be restrained actually by the pastor and some of the men. He was violent. He got violent. So we get home and the children are all sitting at the table and I'm standing there and I'm just waiting. I don't know what's coming down the pipe, And he looks at me and very sober, and he says, "All right, I'm done." He said, "I've put up with this Jesus stuff for a year." He said, "I give you 2 weeks to come back to Islam, or I'm going to throw you on the streets." And that was his grace and mercy, because it was the death penalty. Instead, he was just going to disown me, basically. Right. And at that point, I knew what I was saying, Rashid. I knew what I was saying. And I looked at him straight in the eye, and you know how important that is. You're not supposed to look the husband in the eye. And I said, "Muhammad, I'm ready to die for Christ." And at that moment, with his mom present and several others at the family, he said, "I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you."
So it happened that day?
Yes.
And what happened after that?
It went from bad to worse. You would think that would be it.
You left the house?
I left 2 days later. We had another small house that we had rented out, and it became available. And there's a lot involved in the story, but apparently he was going to, there was some things that he was doing under the table the whole time. Money was being sent to the Middle East and out of our bank accounts and stuff. He was hiding things. He was getting ready to leave. He was just biding his time until the proper time. And so that next Monday or a couple of days later, I was lying on the floor in my closet, just really praying, "God, please just, I don't want to leave if it's not you. Even though he's already divorced me, I know he's cheating on me, I know all this stuff. No, I'm not crazy, but I really, really, really believe for his salvation. And I still do to this day, believe for his salvation and his family. My heart is to see, I remember the first time I went to Israel in 99, I stood there and wrote on a piece of paper and stuck it in the Wailing Wall. And I said, "God, I ask for 1 million Muslims to come to Christ." And I heard the Lord speak, not audibly, but into my spirit deep. And he said, "You know what, Katrina? You think too little. You think too little. You see, God's heart is that all should be saved." Amen. And so I remember, leaving the house and laying on the floor first and saying, "God, please tell me, is this right to leave?" And I heard in my spirit the Lord speak to me and say, "Hate even the clothes defiled by the flesh." And my clothes were on one side of the closet and Muhammad's clothes were on the other side of the closet. And I'm like, what a strange scripture. That's not a scripture we go around quoting in church. And I'm thinking, God, is that in the Bible? hate even the clothes defiled by the flesh. And it was just like so vivid. And I opened the Bible, into my concordance, and I found it in Jude. And it talks about snatch some from the fire, and others hate even the clothes. The very same words, hate even the clothes defiled by the flesh. And it was like I could see the clothes took on life, where he had walked, where he had been. And God, I guess, spoke to my spirit and said, you're released. Because then he started bringing me scriptures about when you can leave, what are the reasons for divorce. And that, I guess, brings me to my second book. That's why I wrote this book. It's called I Did, I Do Again. It's a divorce recovery book. And it has a lot in there about Islam. It has a lot of comparison between a Christian relationship and marriage is difficult.
Right.
I don't care if you're the same culture or the same background, whatever. It's difficult. But when you've got a different culture, a different religions, how do you raise the kids? Where do you go? What do you do? How do you compromise? How do you compromise? And these are things these women are not thinking about that got into my situation or getting into my situation. So this is how this book was birthed. It talks about those things. It talks about what is scriptural. When do you leave? When are you released from a marriage, if you're released? And it's not talking about how to get a divorce and go get remarried again. Right. That's not what this book is talking about. It's talking about if you're in a situation, where are you scripturally? When do you leave? When is it okay? We can get mad at our husbands every few minutes, and that's not our excuse to walk out on a marriage. And I really stuck it out. I really tried my best with Muhammad. So I felt the Lord had released me. And
so since that day, you never went back together?
I never went back. No, I never went back.
What happened to the kids?
It was a long 10-year battle. He didn't give up. It didn't end that day. We had over 400 court pleadings just in our county. We went before 13 judges. He tried to kidnap them. I mean, you name it. It's in our county. It was a long battle. Thousands upon thousands of dollars that I spent in attorneys and lost everything. I mean, we went down from $1 million mansions, the children and I, to running for our lives for over a year in and out of shelters. And then from there, I finally got to the point where I decided I can't live in fear. And God says, I do not give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of a sound mind. Amen. And if I could say anything to the camera, if you don't mind,
yeah, sure.
I want to say to you, if you're out there, if you're considering dating a Muslim or marrying a Muslim or converting to Islam, please ask God to show you his truth, because God will show you. I got to the point where I even asked God, if Christianity is wrong, if Judaism is wrong, and Buddhist is wrong, and Islam is wrong, show me truth. God, I know you're real, but show me truth. And that's all he wants to hear. And God is faithful. He loves you so much that he sent his son to die for you. And nothing you've gone through is wasted. He will use it all. He will bring it all together. He's got a master tapestry that he's weaving for your life, for his glory. Give him a chance. Just ask him to show you if he's real. And I challenge you to ask him. And I know in my heart of hearts, he will prove himself real to you. Give God the chance. He wants a relationship, not a religion, not a ritual. He loves you so much. From the smallest things in your life to the biggest, he's willing and waiting on you. All he wants you to do is cry out, and he will come down with his mighty strong arm and lift you up. Jesus is the Lord. He is the King of Kings. And he did die, but he is alive, and he's coming soon.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. We have Sister Robin with us today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And I just have, I'm very eager to know your story, so please share with us your story from the beginning.
Okay, well, I ended up marrying 2 different Muslim men, not just one. The first time, my husband, after our marriage, he came into the kitchen and he said, "Here, fill out these papers." And I said, "What's this?" "It's immigration papers." And I said, "Well, why are we filling out immigration papers? You're working. That's how I met you. What happened? And he just said, I was illegal. I overstayed my visa. And I was like, wow, that was a shock. And I thought, okay, well, how's the rest of the marriage going to go if this is the first lie? And it's only been a week. And I thought, oh, wow.
So you didn't know your husband for a long time, or like how did it happen first? Like how did you meet him, if you can share that? Where is he from? All this background just before you went to marriage.
I met him through a friend of ours, introduced me to him. It kind of set up a blind date. They knew that I was been married to an American. That didn't go well. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, a foreigner, you know, I'm willing to go on a date and see what happens. And it's funny, the date started out very casual. And then, you know, a few days, he started calling me every day. And then next thing you know, we were seeing each other every day. It just moved very, very quickly. And then one thing led to another. And before I knew it, he asked me to marry him. And I wanted to, but I talked with my parents, and my parents, specifically my father, said, if you marry him, we won't speak to you. And I was like, oh, come on, Dad, you know, don't do that. But he was serious. He was dead serious. And so I married him anyhow, which that was a mistake. But the point is, you know, you fall in love. You think, oh, this is the right man for me. And
he was from where?
From Morocco, sorry.
From Morocco.
Yes.
Well, and he was a Muslim.
Yes, he was a Muslim.
And what time frame all this happened? Like a month, 2, a year?
I would say from the time we started dating until the time we were married, probably 2 months, 3 months at the tops.
Wow. And you didn't feel it's a little bit rushing, like it's a rush, it's in a hurry?
I did, but yet at the same time, there was just something about him that was very calming. Okay. It just filled whatever gap I had inside me that I needed. So
you were not like a little bit having some questions about his faith, being a Muslim? You are American, he's Moroccan, different cultures, different religions. You didn't take that into consideration?
I didn't know really anything about Islam. I didn't know anything about the Muslim culture. All I knew was I assumed he was Americanized because he had lived here for some time, celebrated Christmas, you know, things like that. We talked about God. We both believe in God. He said he believes in one God. And to be honest with you, I just thought, well, you know, we've got the basics foundation here, Abraham, you know, the Old Testament. The only point was with Jesus, which he believed he was a good man, and we both disagreed on that point.
But it was not a big deal.
Well, it should have been a big deal, but unfortunately, when you're blinded with love, you just seem to kind of justify whatever you want.
So here you go, you got married and everything. Did you do it in a church or just how did the marriage go?
We got married in my home.
Okay.
We had a notary come and marry us.
Okay. And then you were surprised that you had to sign immigration paper.
Yes.
That started anything like in your mind, questions, raised any red flags, something like that?
Oh, definitely. If there had been a way to annul the marriage, I probably would have done it. But, you know, according to my understanding of how you can get an annulment, you know, we had already consummated the marriage, so I couldn't. That's what I thought.
So how did it go after that?
It went pretty well. I mean, he wasn't a practicing Muslim, and I think that's the one thing that helped me quite a bit. Very easygoing.
Did you sign the immigration paper?
Yes, I did.
And he had his paper after that through the marriage?
Yes. He got his permanent residency, and then he went on to get his citizenship. And it was shortly after he got his citizenship that things kind of started to fall apart.
Okay, what happened?
He used to tell me, go to church all the time or don't go at all. And so I went to church regularly, and I had 2 children. I took them with me. And one day I came home and he said, what was the church sermon about? And I thought, well, is he asking me because he really wants to know, or is he just making sure I went to church? And so I told him it was about sharing the gospel. You don't need a degree in divinity. All you needed was to know that the Lord loves you and you can accept him as your Savior. And it's not based on works, which I found out later the Islamic religion, in my opinion, was based on works. Right. And so he ended up saying the sinner's prayer because I felt like the Lord asked me to ask him, and I did. I said, do you want to be a Christian? And he said, yes. And I said, well, say this prayer with me. And when he said the prayer, and his face went from a gray tone to it to bright after the sinner's prayer. And I was like, wow, that really surprised me. I had never seen such a difference. But it didn't, I felt like that was a real heart conversion, and I thought things would change. But it didn't end up going that way. So he was a Christian for a short time before he went back to Morocco. And that's when things fell apart even more. I believe he had an arranged marriage because he came back with all this fancy clothing. And I'm like, something's not right here.
How much he spent in Morocco? How much time?
A month.
A month?
Yes, every time he went, he spent a month.
And you think that a marriage happened during that?
Yes.
After getting his citizenship?
Yes.
Okay. So you stayed married for how long?
I think it was 6 or 7 years.
Wow, that long.
Mm-hmm.
And so after 6 years, he went and he had another wife in Morocco.
Yes.
Do you think it was like a setup, like he just sorry to say this, used you to get his paper, like it's
yes. I do. At first I didn't think so. But later, when you remove yourself from the situation and you see some of the different things that had happened and you kind of reevaluate your life, you're like, maybe that was his agenda from the very beginning.
And so how did it end? How things went from a marriage, a stable marriage, and to like getting divorced or like separated? Right. Or
he told me one day that the Lord told him to leave. And I'm like, what? What do you mean the Lord told you to leave? He said, the Lord's telling me I need to leave. So, we went back and forth over this issue, and I said, why? I don't get it. What have I done? Nothing. He just felt like the Lord told him to leave. And so that's what he did. But the whole time he had already had a prearranged marriage, and the prayer of faith turned into saying the Shahada again when he was in Morocco, because he had an arranged marriage waiting for him.
So you think he went back to Islam?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So do you think he was just like pretending that he's the a good husband and everything until he got his citizenship and things went another direction or something like that?
I don't know if he was just pretending. I think I think it was real because even afterwards, he would still send me flowers on my birthday and cards at Christmas. And, you know, why? For, you know, he's the one who broke up the marriage. Why is he still trying to pursue a relationship? Mm. So I don't know. I mean, that's a real good question that only he can answer.
Tell me about the second experience that happened. What happened after that? Did you, like, you said enough, like another culture, another religion, like I shouldn't get into this from the beginning, something like that?
Well, a number of years passed in between the two because I needed time, and I was very lonely at the time, and a girlfriend of mine was dating a Moroccan man, and he had brought his brother over, and we all, you know, hung out together and did things. And then next thing I know, we were in the movie theater one day, and he said, you know, I really want to be serious with you. And so we started talking. We started talking more and more, and we decided to get married. And I was thinking, wow, how am I going to explain this to my parents again, you know, the second go around? But I think they understood. Obviously, I had some issues because that's what I was attracted to. And, you know, we ended up getting married, but this is really quite a twist. We were married by a Jewish rabbi.
How's that?
Yeah, I know. This Jewish rabbi that we found, you know, spoke to us a little bit about why we wanted to get married and so on. And his wife was born in a Muslim country, but she wasn't a Muslim. And he agreed to marry us, and I don't know if he was just doing it to...
And your husband accepted?
Yes. As a matter of fact, he told me, he says, we have a lot of Moroccan Jews in our country.
So he didn't mind?
No, not at all. He didn't even flinch. So
he didn't insist, for example, that you should go to a mosque and do the...
No, not at all.
Okay, and what happened after that? Was he from Morocco too?
Yes, he was from Morocco. And after that, we, you know, started doing what married couples do, going places, doing things together. I really enjoyed his company quite a bit. I mean, we seemed to be very well suited for each other. The only thing that started happening, you know, as we got more and more into the marriage, he started doing his prayers more.
He was a practical Muslim?
Yeah, he practiced quite a bit. And I didn't see all those things in the beginning because, you know, we were separate. We were both, you know, in different houses. But he said all the prayers, he did Ramadan, things like that. But that's when I noticed more that I was learning more about Islam from him. And the more I saw, the more I was like, wow, I'm not sure that this is going to work long term. Because to give you an example, I'm getting ready for work in the bedroom, and I come out, he's in the living room saying his prayers, and because I passed by him, he had to start his prayers all over again. Like they were invalidated because I walked by. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. And during Ramadan, we would be sleeping together, and then at a certain hour in the morning, he would just throw me on the other side of the bed and like, oh, you can't touch me now. And I'm like, well, why? You know, it's like, because this is when Ramadan starts. And I said, well, wait a minute. You mean all throughout the year, you can drink, smoke, do whatever, and it's okay.
He does that?
Well, he did at one point, and then he, you know, didn't do that anymore. But the point is, you know, that was his life. You can drink and smoke and carouse, and then all of a sudden, during Ramadan time, you're holy. How is that? You know, I told him, I said, either live holy all year or don't do it.
Right.
You know, or just quit fasting. I mean, what's the point if just for 30 days? And I talked to him about, I would see him prepare for prayer, washing his hands, his feet, his leg, every, you know, part of his body in preparation for saying his prayers. And I said, you know, I think that's really admirable. However, have you prepared your heart? And he said, no, we don't. It's you're prepared the outer body. And I said, but it's the inner body you need to prepare, because you're worshiping. And he just didn't seem to grasp, you know, that it's the heart. It's not just the outward acts.
And so you started noticing that he's a practical Muslim, and the way he lives, it's like making some problems. Did it go to your marriage, like influence it, the whole relationship, something like that?
Yeah, a lot of little things popped up, like the cable guy came to hook up the cable, and he asked me, well, why'd you let him in? And I said, well, you made the appointment. I let him in. It's like, well, you shouldn't have a man in your home with me not being there, or at least have another woman or another man there. And I said, well, you know, what am I supposed to do? You made the appointment. You know your work schedule. Why is it my problem? So just little things like that kept coming up. And I just thought, you know, the more I saw of Islam, the more I thought, that is definitely not for me. And I'm very happy that I never converted.
Did he ask you at any time to be a Muslim?
Yes, many times. And he would talk to me about, you know, the world's going to end soon, and I don't want to see you go to hell. And I said, well, you know something? I said, I know, I appreciate your concern for me as your wife. However, I don't believe I'm going to go to hell. I said, but I have a question to ask you. Do you believe God is holy? Yes, he said. I said, do you believe heaven is a place where there's no sin? He said, yes. And I said, then how can you believe that in paradise, which is their word for heaven, that you can have multiple virgins and this is going to be your life, having sex over and over, when heaven's supposed to be a holy place where God lives with his people? How is that? And he said, that's our prize. And I thought, wow, well, I don't want that prize.
So you had conversations about doctrinal issues.
Yes.
Did it upset him at any time, or like did you, both of you had like conflicts based on these discussions?
We did have a few. As a matter of fact, one point where I left him some literature in Arabic for him to read, in the middle of the night while I was sleeping, he burnt the book. Which was, you know, I couldn't understand why the fire alarm went off, but because they hid it, you know, he didn't want me to know that he burnt the book. And then the next day, you know, I see that even the faucet handle looked like it was charred, and I thought, wow, you know, to me that was a little extreme, that he's going to burn a book that I give to him. You know, it's not going to change.
Did you ask him?
Yes, and he just said, I don't want to talk about it. You know, I'm not going to read something that's contrary to what I believe. And I knew then things were getting even rockier.
So did he stop you at any time from going to church, or were you at least going at that time to church or doing your Christian prayers, or like reading your Bible?
He did not stop me from going to church, which I'm very grateful. But, you know, I had to do some soul searching myself. And really, at that time, I realized, you know, I'm just a pew sitter taking up space. You know, where's this relationship that I need to have? So.
Did he get his paper through marriage as well?
Yes, he did.
So you had to sign immigration paper for him as well?
Yes, and it was very sobering when in the immigration interview, the lady asked me do you understand that you're saying that you will support him financially for 10 years? And I went, wow. Well, it's kind of late to have this talk on the flip side. I mean, you should have that talk on the other side.
Right.
I had no idea.
Well, I mean, from the first experience, didn't you have a fear that probably the same thing going to happen? These Moroccans, they just like use American women to get their paper for any reason, and then later on they will go for their life and they will leave her. Didn't you feel probably the same experience going to repeat itself?
You know, it did cross my mind. However, I just thought, oh no, this is different. This is different. Again, it's just justifying what you want when in truth, yes, I should have known. I mean...
Now, so how long it lasted?
I think it was 4 or 5 years.
So he got his citizenship?
He got it later,
okay.
After.
But almost.
Separated, yes.
And then, what was the point where, like, you broke up, like, both of you?
Actually, we were in Spain on a vacation visiting his sisters, which that's when he said that he never wanted to marry me. Yeah, I was shocked. Never wanted to marry me. He wanted children. He knew I couldn't have children. And I said, nobody put a gun to your head. Why? Why did you marry me then? I didn't force you to. And I think it was his brother. Because all I can think of was an incident that happened during our marriage. His brother told me that he was helping other Muslim men find American women for wives, taking them to local nightclubs and like saying, oh, look at that girl over there. She's not really dancing, or she's maybe not as pretty, a little overweight. That's who you need to target. And that's what they did.
So it was like kind of planned.
Yes, it was planned. And then, then I realized, wow, I was the victim of his brother too. He set me up in the same manner.
So do you think there is like there are certain methods used by different people within America to target certain American women and use them to get paper and get citizenship, and later on you go get married in your country, a Muslim woman, or try to convert her? Do you think there is a certain plan like this from your experience and talking to others?
I believe there's a definite plan. More and more women who would come to me because I started a support group, because I didn't have anybody who knew enough about Islam at the time of the first marriage to help me. And so over the years, I saw a pattern, and that was a definite pattern that it's like I call it the 5-year plan.
The 5-year plan?
Yeah, that was my term for it. Because it just seemed like within 5 years, they get what they want, they move on, and almost all of the ones that I knew, the situations with the wife, the husband had already been back to his country to marry, and then was just waiting till he was divorced, and then would do the papers to bring over the Muslim woman.
So what is the 5-year plan? How it starts, how it ends?
It starts with a very quick romance. And of course, looking for women who, maybe aren't the most beautiful, but just nice women they know that they can live with. But, and then from there, they'll say things like, oh, I'll make sure nobody ever hurts you again. And, it's a shame your husband didn't treat you well, and I would never do that. Trying to build up trust. And you end up trusting them. You believe them at their word. But their words were just, you were being deceived.
Do you think it is related to culture or to religion, or what is the thing behind it? Like, is it something just Moroccans do, or is it a pattern shared by so many nations? I want to hear your opinion about this.
I think it's more than just one culture. It seems the pattern is rampant throughout America, but you don't hear about it. People don't talk about it.
Why?
Well, because women don't want the world to know they've been deceived. So they're not going to tell you. And the men certainly aren't going to tell you, because then immigration or the law might be looking at them a little more closely. So I just think that there's a definite plan put in place. And at one time I had heard, but I can't verify 100%, about the Young Fighters Club. And it was a group who train young men, just like my brother-in-law was doing, on how to court American women and get them to marry them. And if they do, they win a certain amount of money. And who sponsors it, I don't know. But it was amazing that in my own situation, my brother-in-law all of a sudden had $10,000 to start a business not long after we were married.
So how you explain that?
Yeah, I don't know. When I was going to the post office with him one day, and he said he had to mail this check. And so I was holding on to his paperwork, and I looked. It was a check for $10,000. And I said, "Where'd you get this kind of money?" He grabbed it from me and said, "I don't need to tell you anything. Stay out of my business and don't question it." And that's all. It was like, wow, okay.
So from your experience now, any woman will see this. Like, what is your advice to people who go through the same experience? What are you going to tell them?
First of all, take it from somebody who did it twice. Mm-hmm. It's not worth it. You end up losing time. They're just wasting your time. And then you end up being older and you're going, wow, what happened? You know, the best years of my life, they've stolen. And I allowed it by marrying them. Just don't do it. Walk away. It may be hard. You may love them. But I think if you give yourself time and really think about all the different problems you can have, and the fact that they're not in it for the long term, that's not the purpose of the marriage. That you're just going to end up sad and brokenhearted. So,
and the Bible tells us about the darkness and light.
Right.
They cannot. They don't go together. Didn't
Right.
you take faith into consideration? Like, as a Christian, I don't know how much were you at that time strong in your faith. But didn't you think about Islam as being a different faith, and it contradicts definitely the Christian faith? Did you think about it?
you know, I didn't know enough about Islam until it was too late to really, yes, I know about light and dark and that you shouldn't be unequally yoked, but you know, it just really didn't have enough meaning for me to sit there and go, well, you know, this verse means this to me. It really didn't mean, or I didn't understand the meaning. Maybe that's a better way to put it, what that really meant. Because I looked at Old Testament characters and I saw marriage to foreigners, but look at the result of some of them. That's the key. If you want the end result to be a long-term marriage and growing old together, you're not going to get it by marrying an unbeliever, and B, somebody who's there just to use you to get what they want.
Being involved in a support group, and I'm sure you have seen so many cases similar somehow to yours. Do you think Islam has, as a religion, has anything to do with this?
Yes.
From what angle?
And again, this is my personal opinion, I feel like they're trying to come through the back door of America and infiltrate our culture through marriage to American women. And then they turn around, dump us, get somebody else from their culture. And so you're left with a bunch of broken-hearted women, children even. Some of them, the women have children. And it's just horrible to see what happens.
Being myself a former Muslim, I can see something, and I want your opinion about it. Let's say I am a Muslim and I see a Christian country and I see I have the right as a Muslim, as a superior religion, that I can take advantage of them any possible way, even using their own girls, their own women, their own money to one day rule their country and have my religion the dominant one.
Right.
Do you see any place of this idea in what happened to you?
I think definitely that can happen in America. Little things that you don't see advertised or reported by the media, honor killings. You hardly ever see that reported by the media. Judges making decisions based on Sharia law when that is not the law of the land here. Why are we even considering Sharia law? So it's already begun, in my opinion, and I feel like the churches need to wake up.
What can the church do to stop this, or at least make an awareness?
Educate themselves about Islam. Really, not only the pastor, but their lay people who are out in the community. They don't understand what's going on. They just know that, oh, you know, all they think about is Iran, you know, and what's happening there. But they don't understand that in the meantime, all this other stuff is going on that they're totally blind to. And it's going to affect them. It's going to affect the church. There were other women, not in the church that I went to, but that I had found later, who were doing the same thing as me, and their church didn't have enough information to really counsel them.
I heard that the most targeted people in the United States by Islam are African Americans and women. Do you confirm this from your experience and from talking to other people?
I had more experience with them targeting women, American women. I'm not sure about the African American. I'm sure that does exist, but I don't have the experience to say yes.
How about cases of abuse? Did you hear about any cases, or at any time in your experience have seen an abuse of women based on the culture, like, and especially religion, that we can beat them, we are superior to them, they have to serve us, they have to cook for us, they have to do everything in the house, and we are the kings, we just work and come and sit.
Right.
So did you experience this? Because this is how we were raised, and part of it is religion. Do you have anything to say about this?
I know that there was a lot of abuse, physical abuse in cases of women that I spoke to, but in my own personal case, it was more, I had a back injury and I told my husband, please, you need to work, because he wasn't working.
So he was not working. Sorry to stop you here.
Yes.
And you were supporting him?
Yes, yes. I was supporting him. And he wasn't working, and every day I would cry because of my back injury and have to force myself to go to work. And
which husband? The first one or
the second one?
The second one.
And that's when him and his brother came up with the idea to start the business, start their own business, and the money magically appeared.
So the abuse, we were talking about the abuse. You have not seen from other women that went through the same experiences abuse?
Oh yeah, they've been abused. One woman who's a very good friend of mine, the abuse was so bad, they consider her case as like the standard to judge other cases because it was so bad. And it was amazing that the courts awarded custody of the child to the father, the one who was doing the abuse. It doesn't make sense.
How about, I heard about polygamy within the Muslim community, but it's not recorded anywhere. So he has on paper one woman, but actually he has 4 or 3 or more than one. So do you confirm this from dealing with cases of American women married to Muslim men?
Yes. What they do is they'll marry the American woman, you know, through the courts, whatever, and then they will go later and get another wife and just marry in the mosque because the mosque does not have to report it.
So this is like confirmed by many cases or just one incident?
No, there were a few. There were a few cases, but also just as a woman myself to see, is that really happening? I signed up for a Muslim dating site, and there were so many cases of men looking for other women, and they put right in their profile, you know, I'm married, but I'm looking for another Muslimah, and we can just get married in the mosque. I was shocked.
On the internet?
On
so
the
on
internet.
Public?
Well, it was a Muslim dating site, so.
So it's a marriage, Islamic marriage, but it's not recorded with the government.
Correct.
And the mosque blesses this marriage, because even if it contradicts the law of the country.
Well, I assume so. I mean, otherwise, why would they marry them, knowing that they're married already?
Well, last thing, do you have anything to say to girls and women who are sometimes attracted to a good-looking Middle Eastern man? They love him, and he looks fine, and he looks moderate. He's not going to force them to convert or anything, at least at the beginning.
Right.
Do you recommend that marriage? Do you say go for it? What are you going to say?
Of course, my answer is going to be run. Run the other way, because it's just a waste of time. It's like seeing something that, like a beautiful piece of art, and you think it's painted by some famous painter because the name is there. But if you look closely, you really see that it's a forgery. You know, they come and they're dressed nice, they have nice smelling perfume, which of course we all love, and then, you know, they say all the right things to you, but in the end, they don't want what you want. They just want access to America. And you're the vehicle for them to gain that access, and you end up with nothing. So don't do it.
Thank you so much, Robin.
You're welcome.